now, and I'm going to let everyone in now as well.
Sounds good. Hello. Ooh, bit of feedback happening there. Okay, I can't actually see the room, but we have a whole table of people. Fantastic. Where's that? Jason, what firm is that?
This is DFK Gray Perry.
Oh, fantastic. Hi, guys. Welcome to the party.
Hello.
Okay, there's a few other people coming through, so we're just going to be slightly patient to get as many people in as possible, but then Lynn will be letting the stragglers in as they arrive as well, so it will all work fine. So I'll just give another, we got the coffees. Where's lunch? You must be starving. Okay. What's the time? Okay, we're right on 1 o'clock, so we will get started. So welcome everybody who is with us this morning, or this afternoon actually, to dive into the topic of self-leadership, or the way that I really like to describe it is thriving through self-leadership. It works in both the business and the personal world, but what I'm going to be talking you through today has got a little bit more emphasis on how you can utilize the overall approach to self-leadership within a business and a career dynamic, because obviously that's the thing that we all have in common at this point in time. So this is being recorded. There'll be slides, there'll be resources, there'll be all sorts of good stuff available to you. I do advise you take some notes though, if there is things that really stand out for you, because one of the key parts of self-leadership is making it practical rather than theoretical, things that you can actually put into place as an individual on a daily basis to be able to build this set of skills. So note paper is always a great idea. So what we're going to cover today, if my slides behave, is first and foremost what it actually is. What is the concept of self-leadership, why it's important, what are some of the benefits that it offers you as an individual, but also within that career or managerial roles, and how is it different to other professional and personal development approaches you may have come across, or I hope you've come across in the past. We'll be looking at the 5 interdependent principles that are under the self-leadership umbrella that I've created, and how they blend together like a recipe, all essential ingredients, but they need to blend together. There is not like a stepped approach, and I'll show you what I mean. Then the integration, how to actually practice these principles on a daily basis so you can build up your own foundation. And there is going to be an exercise that we'll be doing together or individually as we go through to illustrate those principles. And then really the next step is your own commitment to developing these concepts, the practices you can put into place, the resources that I'll send out to you, and an option for some further support if you'd like to dive in more deeply. Okay, so let's define it first. Like, what actually is it? I can't see the chat box from here. So what I'm keen though is to see whether or not anyone has their own definition of what they think self-leadership actually is. Lynn, am I right in thinking that you can see the chat box?
That is absolutely correct, I can.
Awesome. So if we can put some fingers to keyboards wherever possible, and just give me a couple of definitions as to what you think self-leadership is. And then we can build from there, and let me know if anything turns up there.
Well, for me, Angela, I actually don't know what self-leadership is.
Oh, well, that's a blank slate. I love to start with that. Is there anybody else popped anything in? Oh, I can see the chat up the top. Let's see. They're going to let me show chat previews.
Directing your own workflow.
Mm-hmm. Directing your own workflow. That is definitely one piece. We're going to go with that one because I can only see one commitment at the moment. So it definitely does. I want to take from that the concept of directing yourself, because that is at the core of this. Now, there was a fellow called Charles Mans, who is the professor of business leadership at the University of Massachusetts, who first coined self-leadership back in the 80s. And that's how he defined it: the practice of intentionally influencing your thinking, feeling, and actions towards your objectives. That's quite a dry definition, but the key here is intentionally influencing yourself. So it's as a self-leader, we say that you have control and influence over what you're thinking, feeling, and the actions you take. So directing your own workflow definitely falls under that type of definition. Okay, it's actually based on quite a few psychological theories. I won't go into all of these here, but for those of you who are really interested in psychology, this is grounded in psychological theory. It's not just something that was plucked off a tree to work only in a business environment. So it definitely goes across all spheres. And really, the way I like to look at it, it's a bit of a journey to becoming like the boss of your own life, the CEO of your own life. And it's the skills that are involved help you really navigate through all the things that are thrown at us, because it's not difficult to say that life isn't always smooth, and there is a lot of curveballs that come our way. And when you have the skills of self-leadership, your ability to actually manage those, navigate them, even avoid them, and move through them is hugely improved. We hear a lot about resilience, and this is baked into the concept of self-leadership. But another very key piece is well-being. We've had a lot of extra emphasis on the well-being of ourselves and our staff, especially in the last 3 years. And self-leadership also has that baked into it as well. So essentially, these are the core principles as I define them. So I've created a framework that is working really well with clients, and this is the way I like to interpret it. So you start up on top left. What we're talking about with self-knowledge. As a self-leader, you can't go around with a blindfold on. You need to understand what's important to you. You know, what are your personal values? What are your strengths? What's the vision you have for your business and life, for your career and life? But also importantly, what are your blind spots? Where are your growth edges, your spiky edges, the things that you might not necessarily like to look at, the things that perhaps come up in a performance review that need to be well-rounded and they're harder to look at. Well, a self-leader has courage in that respect and will look not only at their good side, but also at those darker edges as well. Because it's only when you have clear self-knowledge, which is different from self-awareness, can you build goals that work for you. The next piece is flexible thinking. Now, I'm not sure who here may have heard of cognitive distortions, but it's a psychological term that really talks about fixed thinking. And one of the most common examples of it is all or nothing thinking. Something's either great or it's crap. There's nothing in between. I always do this well. I always do that poorly. And there's nothing in between. That's just one of about 15 cognitive distortions that we can fall into, and they can really trap your ability to effectively deal with the situation in front of you, because you have this record playing of how things always work. One of the resources I'll send out is a list of common cognitive distortions. And just knowing which ones you fall into can then help you start to flex your thinking, because you need that awareness. Okay? And then there's some exercises as to tools and skills you can develop to have more flexible thinking. Emotional intelligence, that's one that I'm sure many people have heard about before. EQ for short, and I'll define that more clearly. But when you have that ability to tune into what's going on inside for you, there's a much better chance that you will respond to situations rather than just react. Intentional action, that's again coming back to directing your own workflow, which was brought up at the beginning. Intentional action is a part of that. Intentional action is when you are not just doing things by accident or by default. You're planning out, you're making choices and decisions that align with your goals, with your self-knowledge, and they are also underpinned by vitality. Now, this is the well-being piece, and it's actually, I didn't have this piece in the framework when I first created it early this year, but I recognized without vitality, it does not matter how much you know yourself, how flexible your thinking is, how much EQ you have, or how many intentional goals and actions you set. If you don't have the energy to do any of it, then it's pointless. So yes, the self-care, the well-being aspect is incredibly important. So that's the overall principles. But what I want you to understand most importantly is this is not a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Okay, this is very much, as I was saying, it's like a recipe for each individual. These 5 pieces need to be involved, but you don't put them in a particular order. They are very much about the concept of synergy, 1 + 1 = 3. So when we're bringing all the pieces into our daily life and career, that's when you get the compound effect and become a more effective self-leader. So think of them in that way. So just very quickly, some of the benefits that are involved in adopting this: you have better decision making because you have more flexibility and emotional intelligence to be able to make better choices. You get better confidence and resilience because, as we were saying before, life is complex. And when you can, with more poise and adaptability, navigate that world, you're going to get better results. Your interpersonal skills are going to get better, especially when you work on your EQ, your emotional intelligence. And that collaboration opportunity within teams and your departments is vital. Better work-life integration. We don't live in silos, okay? So what happens at work and what happens at home, what happens at play, everything blends together. And these skills will help you just as much in your personal relationships as they will in your business relationships. But they do also accelerate your career, or if you're a business owner, they can accelerate that as well. Because this is about, and it's a term that I hear so often, I'm not reaching my potential. Like you feel that there's more there that is possible, but you're not quite sure how to connect with it. Self-leadership, I found, is that way of opening that door. So it's an orientation to the world. And it differs perhaps from some of the professional and personal developments you may have done in the past. And believe me, I've been doing this stuff for years. And this has really just come together for me, lately. It's practical. Like I'll give you an example of some of the tools that you can use today. I can only skim the surface today because it's a big subject, but it's practical. You'll be able to use some of these tools immediately, easily, and consistently. So it's not like, well, there's the theory, now go back to work. You take the tools back to the workplace. And it's very holistic in terms of that blend that we saw overall. The focus on self-knowledge. Now, self-knowledge, some people go, it's not meant to be all about me. It's all about the people that are around me as well, which is true. But you need to understand or deepen your understanding of yourself so that you can make more intentional and sustainable choices. If you understand, for example, what your strengths are and what you enjoy doing, actually directing your career becomes a lot easier. Putting your hand up for particular projects, customers, promotions becomes much more clear to you when you know more about what's important to you. An emphasis on emotional intelligence, that is often covered separately when it comes to professional and personal development, but when it's actually brought in as an interplay, it helps in all of those other areas. So that's the holistic approach. And it really empowers you. This is about, I want you as a self-leader to be able to make these decisions and take these actions of your own accord. There's no one looking over your shoulder. So that's really important for you to be able to take that ownership and run with the self-leadership concept. So that's where I see some of the differences from a lot of the emotional intelligence and other professional and personal development programs I've been involved in. Okay. So the first part of that wheel is self-knowledge. Now, what do I mean by that? It's really, to me, it's the ultimate performance enhancer. Like, take this instead of steroids. Now, having that really deep understanding of your emotions, the way you think, what your strengths are, what those weaknesses or blind spots are, your values, your beliefs, your aspirations. No one is an authority on you more than yourself, but you need to actually be proactive in understanding who you are and what that actually means. Okay, that self-knowledge is the thing that helps you make better decisions. And most importantly, it's about setting the right goals for you. Otherwise, you can fall prey to conditioning that tells you, well, you should want this and you should want that. And you end up putting your ladder against a wall, climbing to the top of it, and then going, what the heck am I doing here? It's not floating my boat. Okay. If you have a higher degree of self-knowledge in the first place, you will choose the wall you put your ladder against with a lot more clarity. And that's where you get the purpose and the fulfillment. Okay. So just touching on this, there is many aspects, but just the three I want to highlight for you today is a sense of purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? Okay. This is that underlying drive, that connection to what it is that you're doing. So you're not just in the accountancy field, though you are, but what's underneath that? What drew you to it? Okay, why, think about why you like helping the clients that you're with, what you like pulling out and solving for them. Try and go deeper than just, I need the paycheck and it's close to home. I don't know what your particular reasons would be, but that sense of purpose is really important to connect with, because that gives you a heck of a lot of motivation and inspiration. Okay, your values. Now, I often do values exercises with clients, and one of the things that I will send out as a resource is a really cool little website I've found where you can do this exercise yourself online and help pick these core values for you, because they need to drive what it is that you do on a daily basis. If you're not connected with your values, you can get success, but it feels empty. So that is the core beliefs and guiding principles that really drive your behaviors. Sometimes you're really aware of what they are, like honesty, loyalty, hard work, whatever it might be. But sometimes you're not aware. And if we don't have alignment with our values, that's what I said, it tends to feel a bit empty. And then the last one is strengths of the ones I'll show you today. And that's really those unique things that come naturally to you, that when you're really performing at your best, you're using them. And one of the challenges with strengths is that if it comes naturally to you, you don't necessarily value it. You think, well, everyone can do this. And that's not always the case. So understanding your strengths is really important. Now, and it's bringing them to life. Like, you can't see this, but up on my wall, I have my strengths and my values. They're on the wall, and every day I am looking, how can I connect in with those to bring that deeper sense of meaning and motivation to the work that I'm doing. So a couple of mine, for example, is growth and connection in terms of my actual strengths. And that's why teaching in this respect is something that I absolutely love, because I'm connecting with people and ideas, and I am sharing the growth that I have learned through picking up on this stuff. So that makes me feel great. And one of my values is curiosity. So I always want to learn new things and pass on what I'm learning in such a way that it's useful for others. So that really lifts my energy, because when you're working in your strengths, then your energy is lifted, which is connected to that vitality piece that I had at the core of the actual model. So when I sent out the invitation, when the invitation went out to today's call, there was an opportunity to do a strengths profile. Now, I know about 10 of you have managed to do that. If you haven't had the chance, you're going to do this next exercise with just your own knowledge, but rest assured, you can still do the strengths profile after today, and I'll resend invitations to anyone who wasn't on the list. But we're going to do this quick exercise now of strengths reflection, because people who use their strengths are 6 times more engaged in their work, 6 times. So for you as an individual, feeling connected and engaged so that the day flies should be pretty appealing. If you're in a leadership position, knowing that your people are going to stick around and be more engaged in the work if they're using their strengths is incredibly important. And 42% of high achievers say that their managers talk to them about their strengths rather than emphasizing the weaknesses that need the gap to be closed. Now, these facts here and a whole lot of others will come out in a sheet to you. They're from Capfinity, which is a UK-based organization which I'm accredited as a strengths practitioner through. And they've got just amazing information about what it does to an organization when you have your people working in their strengths. So very quick exercise. Have you got a pen and paper there? Or the first one is, if you have done the Capfinity strengths test. If you haven't, don't worry about how I say realized and unrealized strengths, because that'll become clear to you when you do the strengths profile. But what are your top 3 strengths that you're aware of? So I want you to stop and think of those, and then cross over. How could you better use those particular strengths, 1, 2, or 3 of them, in your current role? Are you overlooking the connection between something that perhaps you didn't think you're really good at, and it energizes you, but you're not necessarily bringing it into your role? What I would like you to do is spend a minute thinking about that, and then I want one idea shared in the chat box so that we can do a quick précis of what that might look like. Pausing. So in the chat bot goes, what, not bot, box goes, what's the strength that you're thinking of? Just pick one of them. And how might you use that in your current role? Okay, so if you could, I'd love at least 2 or 3 examples in the chat box so that we can share them. Hannah, you're the only person I can see on my screen, so I'm going to pick on you. Do you want to pop something in there? I can see again, I can't see the full chat box, but I can see when someone's typing in. So, oh, we got one in there. Great. I'm going to rely on Lynn to read them out. So who else can pop one in? So we've got at least a couple as examples.
So we've got, Angela, at the moment, we've got flexibility and we've got information sharing equals sharing new info.
Okay, so is the flexibility leading to the ability to share the information? Are they there?
Sorry, they're from different people. So the first one is from me. What is your realized strength, which was flexibility, and Sarah's put in information sharing equals sharing new info, but maybe she can highlight that a bit more. Adaptability is another strength that's come through.
Okay, so adaptability and flexibility, these are really good strengths, and they actually really help in the cognitive, the flexible thinking area. So if we've got flexibility and adaptability, like flexibility was yours, was it, Lynn?
Yes, and we've got also authentic connection as well.
Okay, great. So if we're thinking about flexibility, how could you use that strength more in the role that you're doing at the moment? How could it be leveraged? Oh.
That's a challenging one. I think it already is. The flexibility to move from administration to finance to marketing to events. I think it's actually already being used.
So there's a great example here of how you are in a role that is utilizing your greatest strength. So
I believe so.
If you flick to your unrealized strengths, because you have done the Capfinity profile, is there an unrealized strength that you're aware of? What were your top 3?
I can't actually remember, Angela, sorry.
No, that's okay. But it will be challenging to go back and have a look at those 3 unrealized strengths and see how you might bring them in. Like I've got, just for an example, and I can see there's a couple more in the chat box if you can have a look there while I'm grabbing this. This is a client that I was doing a workshop with last week, and her unrealized strength, a key one that she had was, where is it? Was legacy and mission. And she's looking to build a business on the side, which has got a real, like, she's got a very strong feeling about why this particular product should be on the market. But she hadn't actually brought that mission story into the messaging that she was using on the website. It was just, well, here's a product, buy it, basically. And when she could bring in that sense of mission into the promotion of the business, it connects far more strongly with her audience. So that was an example of an unrealized strength that she could utilize straight away in her business promotion. What else has come up in the chat box before we move on, Lynn?
Creativity, looking for new ways to think about what we do for our clients and what services our accountants could additionally provide for business in the future. Fantastic.
That's a great one. And what I'd add to that is if you have creativity as a realized strength, have a look and see what else is in your toolkit as well, because you could find yourself facilitating a brainstorming session to pull that creativity out of other people as well, if you've got some of those communication strengths there as well. So on an individual level, you can use it, which is brilliant for your client as well. And then on a firm-based level, you might be able to find yourself using it more deeply as well. So this is about reflection. Okay, reflection is one of the key parts of self-leadership, that you look back at your past behavior and reflect on why it's happening and how it could be changed, or to continue to do the things that are working well. And you're reflecting on your skills and how can you bring them more into play. So the actual, the full strength profile takes you through all 60 realized strengths, unrealized strengths, learned behaviors and weaknesses. So there's a lot of reflection you can do with that sort of information. But that's just one example how the self-knowledge can put you in good stead to be able to move forward and expand. Okay, so the next thing that we saw in the recipe was flexible thinking, and that word flexible and adaptable came up, which is great. So flexibility, flexible thinking is that ability to adapt and adjust your thoughts And as a result, it will change your behavior and taking fresh perspectives when different situations or demands, smack you right between the eyes. And it's really, this does foster that creativity that also came up, because when you are using flexible thinking and allowing yourself to look at things from different angles, when you're keeping an open mind, when you're not jumping to conclusions, when you're receptive to new ideas and other people's points of views, then the solutions that we can create are a lot broader. So you've got more things to play with this flexible thinking. So there's lots of skills involved, but the three that I want to bring up today that can help foster flexible thinking is mindfulness. Now that may be something, I've heard that 100 times, but really what this is about is that heightened awareness. So if you are very much in the present, if you're not past pondering or future tripping, if you're actually in the here and now, then only then can you really respond to what is happening in the moment. Now, I'm not saying for planning we don't look to the future or that we don't learn from the past, but if you spend too much time always thinking about things that are coming, you cannot be mindful and look at the opportunities that are right in front of you. Okay, they can go unnoticed. So an incredibly easy and an important skill to learn. Reframing is another one. Now, what this is about, it's a thinking skill, and it's consciously changing the way that you interpret or think about a situation and allowing you to go, maybe it's not like that. Maybe if I looked at it from this angle instead and reframed it, it won't take you down just a normal way of thinking. Well, it's always been like that. Well, what if it was different? What if I paused for a moment and imagined it or reframed it from a different perspective? That gives you more options. And the last one is perspective taking. And this is very much about stepping into someone else's shoes to understand their thoughts and their feelings and their emotions. This one in particular, when we are thinking about, just as an example, offering a service to clients, writing copy for a website, putting an article out into the world, taking it or writing it from the perspective of your client. So an example would be with a website. So often our websites have what I call the three little pigs syndrome, which is we all over the place rather than you, because a website is only ever read by an individual and we should speak directly to them. To do that, we need to put ourselves in their shoes. What are they worried about? What are they concerned about? What's the normal life cycle of a business? So really being able to perspective take and have that flexibility and therefore how you will provide your services is incredibly valuable. So just a simple exercise here, because we know that if you have cognitive flexibility, you're going to be better at problem solving. You're going to be more likely to find innovative solutions, which is what we want. And the great thing is that when you have flexibility, you're not knocked off your perch. Like, I expected it to be this way, and if it isn't, oh my God, you can flex when you are moved around in the world. So you have lower stress, higher well-being. So what I want you to do as a simple exercise is think of a coffee mug. And over the next minute, I want you to list as many other uses for a coffee mug as you can possibly think of. Nothing's off the market here. So yeah, you can drink coffee out of it, but what else could you do with a coffee mug? And then we're going to share some of those in the chat. So a couple of minutes, go for it. Start brainstorming. Okay, we're going to go for another 30 seconds. And stop. Okay. So put a couple of your ideas into chat and let's see some of the ones that we've come up with. Like one's gone in already. I've got a list here from another presentation I did, but I won't let the cat out of the bag yet. Okay, we've only got one so far. Come on, guys. I know you're capable of more flexible thinking than that. Oh, we're up to 2. Excellent.
There's a few in there.
Oh, great. Okay. Again,
Angela, under each of them.
Okay. If you can start reading some of those out and see what we've
So,
got.
pot plants, key bowl, broken up to make artwork, broken up to use a cutting tool, vase, magic tricks, suction massager, makeup brush holder, jelly mold, flower pot pen holder, attach a cord and make it into a handbag, cook a cake for one in it, hide valuables in a Ziploc bag under the tea as an ornament, shoveling dirt, cake tin for microwave, drink, soup, measuring cup, scoop, soup bowl, pen caddy, candle holder, toothbrush holder, makeup brushes, water glass, vase, pot plant, jewelry holder.
That's fantastic. That is so many. Like, you're never going to look at a coffee cup in the same way again. So that really, really simple exercise, which you possibly haven't tried before, it shows all the possibilities that are there. So if we practice that type of flexible thinking exercise about, okay, how could we run this meeting differently? You know, how could we welcome a client differently? How could we promote our XYZ differently? Like, this is the way we've done it. Let's brainstorm for a while with some new ideas. And that's how you foster the creativity, by giving the opportunity and just practicing yourself to start thinking of different ways around things. So that is great. I'd love to keep that list as good evidence of our flexible thinking. So we'll move on to the next piece, which is emotional intelligence. So this is something that a lot of people are aware of already, but let's just quickly define it. It's about recognizing, understanding, and effectively responding to your emotions, but also the emotions of others. And the EQ for short, it's about, this is where the self-knowledge piece is still blended in, as you can see, because it's being aware of your feelings, it's the ability to empathize with something else that's going on, but then using that knowledge, that intelligence, to navigate interactions, make decisions. How do you feel about that, as opposed to just how you think, and to build those relationships because you're putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. So again, it goes back to that flexible thinking as well, with that perspective taking. This is how I mean they're all sort of tied into each other. Lots to this one as well, but let's just start with 3 points. Self-awareness. Now that's about being in tune with yourself so that you can recognize and understand your own emotions. Interestingly enough, when people have been asked, tell me the emotions you're aware of, happy, sad, mad is like the top 3. And a lot of people can only answer with about 4 to 5, maybe sometimes 6 emotions. I like to think of emotions as like an iceberg. There's things above the waterline, but there is so much more depth. And one resource I have it's called the emotions wheel. And the more that you actually take the time to identify the actual emotion, not just the top level, the better you are at responding to yourself in ways that are more building. Empathy. Yes, you get what's going on with you, but what's going on with somebody else? So it's that capacity to understand their emotions and perspectives and needs. This is a skill that, especially because we are a service-based industry, really tuning into what is going on for your client and being able to demonstrate that empathy and then meet it with expertise is incredibly important. Some of you on the line may have remembered this speakers training that we organized with Sarah last year. I think it was last year. One of the things that she said is our connection with other people relies on warmth and competence. Those are the 2 things that we judge people on, and warmth trumps competence. So you've got to have that emotional connection before people are interested in your expertise. So this empathy skill is something that as service providers, we really do want to build. And emotional regulation, that's the ability to control your impulsive reactions and the way that you can handle stress and respond to challenges with more composure and adaptability. So you can only regulate your emotions if you know what they are and what they are doing to you. Now we've all, the expression getting a bit hot under the collar, or having, a churning gut. These things are about your emotions speaking to you. And I think because we often rely on our smartness, for want of a better description, to work, we can sometimes override our emotions. And the two of them are meant to work together. Really, really important. So if those are just 3 pieces of emotional intelligence, let's just practice it slightly right now. Because if you've got higher EQ, you have better connections with others. You're better at that collaboration and resolving conflicts. And then from your perspective, as an individual, you can manage the stress that comes into your life, because we do have incredibly busy lives. So if we know how to handle that and deal with our emotions before they make us explode or hit depression or whatever the case may be, your well-being and your resilience are going to be enhanced. And we need that at the workplace. So I want you to pause for a moment and check in with, what are you feeling now? What are your emotions right now? And what I'd like you to do is just put a brief description in the chat box. Share 2 or 3 emotions that you are cognizant of that are floating around at the moment. Okay, if I was going to share mine, I would say that I'm feeling energized is probably number 1. And the interesting thing is, the reason why I'm feeling energized is because I'm using my top strength, one of my top strengths, and I'm right in tune with my values by doing this as a part of my work. So it energizes me. Okay, so what's going on for you at the moment? And it could have been an emotion you brought into this masterclass or something that's come up during it. But I'd love to see some of what those emotions are in the box. So just tune in. And type it out. And I'll rely on you again, Lynn.
We've got 2 in so far, Angela. One of them is amused, and the reason they're amused is at all the coffee cup responses. And the other one was from me, which is relaxed, and the reason I'm relaxed is because my workload is under control.
Yeah. And see, that's a great example of the self-knowledge as well. That an important component for you to feel relaxed. And when you're feeling relaxed, you're in a much more receptive mood to learning. And so for you to feel relaxed, there needs to be things are under control over here. So coming to a learning environment when you're not relaxed means that you're not going to find it as easy to actually pick up the new skills. So that self-knowledge is important. There's another one popped up.
Yep, it sure is happy, and the reason they're happy is because they're learning from this webinar, and then the other emotion to that is stress because of high workload.
Yeah, such a common one. And it's great but I'll grab both of those for a moment. So the happy one, because I'm learning. So I would make the prediction that if someone does the strengths profile who has that connection, they're happy because they're learning, that growth and self-awareness would probably be a couple of core strengths for them, because not everybody really gets happy when they learn. Some people get stressed when they have to learn. So yeah, the recipe is different for every person. It's the awareness, which is incredibly important. So when I send out the resources, I will send the emotions wheel, but there is also, for those who love apps, I'll put a link to this. There is a brilliant app called the Mood Meter, which helps you identify and get more fluent in the language of emotions. And it's a tool that when I was studying positive psychology, we were taught to use so that we would increase this, what I like to call emotional dexterity. Because if we are more aware of what we're feeling and why we're feeling it, in what situations those emotions come up, we can make better choices and then respond to them more appropriately. So it's something to ask yourself, like, what am I feeling? And then what's going on here? Because that will allow you to increase your EQ. So just a really simple exercise. Intentional action. This one is about improving your focus, your clarity, and your motivation. It's about taking intentional steps towards your goals, the goals that are important to you, those goals that are underpinned and in alignment with your values and your strengths. That gives you that greater sense of accomplishment. And when you have a greater sense of accomplishment, you can do more stuff. And I don't mean in terms of increasing your workload. I mean, you are much more likely to try something new, to be a bit flexible, to go out on a limb, to work up towards a growth edge, to try creativity when you have that sense of accomplishment. So intentional action means it's about not just taking action, but gaining traction. So again, lots of things I can teach here, but we'll just emphasize 3 things: goal setting and planning. No, clear and meaningful goals. A lot of people, when we're setting goals, even if it's a business goal, we are just setting it from a cognitive perspective. Like, we've got to get X amount of clients by Y date to create X amount of money, whatever the case may be. But if we don't underpin it with meaning, we don't have the same level of connection to that goal. So our intentional action will drift off a bit. So very simply, just to bring in the why when you're setting the goals, not just the how. Decision-making and prioritization. This is about making conscious choices that is based on that self-knowledge. If I have to choose between 2 things, which is more aligned with who I am, and that will every time give you more traction. And sometimes when I'm teaching this part, people are like, yeah, but that can't always happen at work. Well, this is about having or creating the type of culture that allows these conversations to happen. And this is all about positive leadership, which is the next topic of conversation, not today's, but it's about creating the environment that actually helps people to thrive so that they are in their wheelhouse where they can both express how they're thinking and feeling and leverage those strengths and values. That's when you get engagement and long-term commitment from your team. And accountability and adaptability, to say those words together. This is about you taking responsibility for your own actions and tracking your own progress. For those of you who did the self-leadership assessment, I sent out a link to the assessment on my website. You would have, and again, I'll send it if you haven't had a chance, but when the guys were, Mans and the other fellows who were starting self-leadership as a psychological concept, there was different ways in which you can self-goal set and self-reward and self-cue yourself to make it much more likely to achieve goals. And those questions are asked in the assessment, and you're given a report that explains to you how you responded to each of those questions. And it gives you a real good insight. So a great example here is, I'm not leaving my desk until I've written this PowerPoint presentation. And when I have, I'm going to have a beer and a slice of cake. That's an example of, not that I'm having either of those, but that's an example of self-reward. And self-leaders are far more likely to be able to self-reward. And self-goal setting relates back to the values that we were talking about before. But this is a long way around of saying, take the assessment, because it will make it clear which of the tools you're actually using and how you can improve them. So intentional action, a quick exercise here is goal alignment. This is about boosting your confidence and your motivation by using toward goals. And I'll explain what that means. And as I mentioned before, it's about traction, not just action. So a toward goal is a positively framed goal. This is a whole technique that I teach, but I'll give you a simple example. Of someone who wants to exercise, improve their overall well-being. A towards goal is, I want to be flexible, strong, and healthy as I age. And that's the motivation under the action that you're going to take. An away goal is like, I'm fat and unhealthy, I'm useless, and I've really got to get off the couch because I look like crap. Okay, that's the motivation for a goal, and it doesn't work. Every bit of research that we've come across says that the way that we speak to ourselves and the way and the orientation to the goal has a huge impact on our ability to actually achieve it. So when we're creating a goal, it needs to be a goal that pulls you forward rather than pushes you away from something that you don't like. In a simple way, I want you to think about one goal, personal or professional, that you'd like to achieve or move towards in the next month. Then thinking about which of your values, this is the 2-pronged exercise you need to go through. Which of your values does it align with? And what strength can you leverage to achieve it? Now, this is not something that you can necessarily just do on this call. This one probably needs a little bit more focus, but I definitely want you to put this exercise into practice, because what this does is that it deepens your connection to the goal. And then you can create a plan to move towards it. But the goal, how does it align with your value or values? And what strength or strengths can you use to actually achieve it? So an example, I'll give you a large example of something that I'm working on. I'm creating the Center for Self-Leadership, which is a place of learning with programs and masterclasses and all sorts of things. It's a big goal. There's many, many steps involved. But which of my values it aligns with? Well, it is very, very much about the love of learning, the growth and the connection. It goes with all of those goals. And in terms of the values, so all of those strengths, and in terms of the values, the curiosity and inclusiveness are two of my core values. And the curiosity plays out because what I learn, I then turn into a teachable opportunity. And so it absolutely aligns with those values. So the curiosity allows me to leverage it and to then include everybody into that will benefit from the knowledge that I'm pulling together. So the goal is underpinned by the values and the strengths. So I know my chances of achieving it are hugely improved because of my motivation that comes as a result of that alignment. So I want you to be thinking about, if the goal that you have is not aligned with your values, if you look at it and go, whoa, actually, that's a should goal rather than a want goal, then you need to do some tweaking and changing. If there's something that you've been wanting to achieve and it just isn't coming to fruition, quite often it's because it doesn't align with your values or your strengths. So you don't want to make it happen, or it's difficult to make it happen. There's other reasons as well. You might need specific help from somebody else, or it might involve skills that you don't have yet. But this is always the first port of call. So if there's something in a department that's been set, a department goal or an organization goal, and it's not coming to fruition, is it aligned with the values of the organization and the individuals that you're asking to pursue it? And are you using the natural strengths of your team members? What can be changed so that you leverage those strengths once you're aware of them more clearly? That's a biggie, this one, but it's definitely an incredibly valuable one. Just checking time. Look, we're on track. So the last piece in the overall self-leadership framework is this cultivating vitality. This is usually the easiest one to cotton onto. Okay, it's about physical, mental, and emotional energy, because when you are taking care of those, you got more resilience, and then you can handle things better. In a nutshell, that's the way of looking at it. So it also helps your brain, because when you are well fed, well watered, well rested, shall we say, not suggesting that you're a horse, that you can maintain your focus and your concentration better. Okay. This one's been an absolute game changer for me this year in terms of, well, last year actually, in terms of working with a naturopath and cleaning up my diet. And suddenly I've got so much more energy. How can you do this? 3 very simple points. The first one is self-care. Like, what do you build in on a daily basis? Okay, that prioritizes you. Especially difficult if you have kids in a full-time career, but you will be a better parent as well as a better employee if you take care of your own vitality. What can you use to reduce stress? There's many different techniques. Mindfulness, which I touched on before, comes in here as well. There are particular relaxation methods and stress management strategies. I don't have time today to go into them all, but I'm going to show you one that can help keep your vitality higher. And doing your own energy audit. Okay, this is about working out. I often do this when I take people on retreats. What's above the line, the activities and the surrounding influences that actually energize you, and what are the ones that drain the hell out of you? People, places, and things. So an energy audit is something that you can do a little longer term, and just be very cognizant of when are you drained and when are you boosted. Do more of the boosting, do less of the draining. And sometimes that means avoiding certain people. But you want to make those intentional choices that are going to maximize that ability to boost your vitality. Okay, so those are just 3 ways in which you can approach it. A very simple exercise. You may or may not have heard of box breathing. Okay, this is about, it's a particular type of breathing I'm going to very quickly take you through that activates your nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, that reduces the sense of stress and anxiety. It enhances your oxygen and the circulation of it, so you will get more alertness and clarity, and that helps you focus. And it can be done really quickly and discreetly. So it's one of those practical tools that you can use throughout the day. Now, a lot of people talk about the power of the breath, and it's like, yeah, whatever. But when you actually use it, it's astonishing at how quickly it can have a very tangible impact on how you're feeling. So box breathing, if you close your eyes and relax in a moment, box breathing has 4 stages to it, hence the box. And it's for a count of 4. So I'll just explain it and then we'll do it. It's breathing in for 4, holding your breath for 4, breathing out for 4, holding your breath for 4 as in not breathing in again, and then breathing in again. So it's done very much in a box with regularity. And especially for the person who said they were feeling stressed because of workload, this is such a useful one. It doesn't change your workload, but it changes your feeling and therefore your ability to handle the workload, or to go and talk about changing the workload, because it will relax and give you more equilibrium in your nervous system. So very simply, if you close your eyes, guys, for just a moment and try it. You need to lean back in your chair or just get comfortable and relaxed. Then close your eyes. Then you breathe in for 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. 2, 3, 4. Out for 4. 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. 2, 3, 4. Continue that for 2 more rounds by yourself. And come back. It's always a good idea to check in with how you're feeling before and after you do something like that, but it is physiologically impossible not to feel a little calmer when you have paused and done that sort of very simple breath work. I haven't got it on the screen, but there's one other I want to give you as well, which is always, I've used it with my kids a lot and it's really useful. And that is, you literally close your eyes and tense up every single part of your body as much as you can. Clench your fists, pull in all your muscles, squinch up your eyes, the whole bit, like really tense, and then relax and let it out. And what that does is it gives you the contrast between real tension and relaxation. And it's another way of breaking out of a cycle of stress, to give your body the contrast between them. There's many other breathing techniques, but I just wanted to share one that you can use incredibly quickly and simply when you're feeling overwhelmed. Okay. So that, running through at 100 miles an hour is the very top level of understanding self-leadership as a framework overall. So what it is, again, it's that art of taking flexible, intentional action on the goals that reflect and leverage your self-knowledge, your values, your strengths, your mission, and that support your vitality. So that balance, which is really important. So that framework that we've looked at is those 5 interdependent and synergistic principles. So they were self-knowledge, flexible thinking, emotional intelligence, intentional action, and vitality cultivation. And hopefully you've seen they all feed into one another. They are not distinct and separate. It is a synergistic unit. The benefits are huge for individuals and organizations. Just some of the top things we've talked about is that enhanced creativity, the engagement, the productivity, and the well-being. So where do we go next? This is really about you making a commitment personally to practice some of these principles. They're not difficult, but there is obviously some complexity to the overall approach to it. But there are things that you can do, which I've shown you today, which are a great start. And yes, group or departmental coaching and mentoring from me for individuals and groups as a whole are available as well. This is really my wheelhouse these days. So a few quick notes. If you've not completed the strength profile, the link is still going to be available. It is an individualized link. So like there's some of you that are together in a room, so you may have only had one profile link sent. So if you need more, then you just need to let me know and I can individually send those out. The strengths profile will give you your top 3 realized strengths, your top 3 unrealized strengths, your top 2 learned behaviors, and your top 2 weaknesses. And if you want to unlock the full strength profile, all 60 of them, and actually have a debrief where I take you through it and we look at how you can utilize those skills and strengths in your role or in your personal life as well, you can book one of those with me, and there is a special DFK rate. It's not the one that's on my website for the rest of the world. If you haven't taken the self-leadership assessment, it's a really useful benchmark. And again, I'll share that link again. And keep an eye on your inbox because there's lots of all the recordings coming out and the extra resources that I have intimated, throughout the presentation. So it's always the $1 million question. Are there any other questions? Is there anything? I'll stop sharing so I can come back to the world. So does anyone have any questions? If anyone has any ideas about things that they've learned that they can see them using, or if they've got something specific within the organization you'd like to know a little bit more about, great opportunity to pick my brain.
I've got one, but I'll leave mine to the end. I'll let everyone else go before me.
No worries. Okay. I know there was a lot. It's difficult to know when you've got so much you can share is what is going to be most useful, but hopefully that's given you a good over the top impression. I can still only see Hannah. So I'm sure, I know there's lots of other people here, but it just does not let me see everybody else. It's quite strange.
Yeah, we've got a few people, and there's a couple of comments saying thanks, Angela. I think one of the questions I had, what if you don't set goals? I'm not a goal setter. I don't do personal goals. I don't do business goals. How do you sort of incorporate this framework if you're not setting goals?
Well, the goal, like setting a specific goal is only one way of orientating yourself to the world. Okay. You're making choices as opposed to setting goals. Like, will I do this or will I do that? Will I take this job? Will I take that job? Will I book that venue or that venue? You're making, choices as you're going through. So possibly think of it like that instead. We know that if you set goals and you have them visible, the chances of achieving them are hugely increased. There's classic studies that show that. And I would encourage you to consider goal setting. Why don't you set goals is the question I'll be asking myself. This is a self-knowledge question. Okay, so I don't set goals, not to judge yourself or make yourself wrong. Bring curiosity to it. Curiosity is a key self-leadership skill. Okay, does not setting goals have any negative context? If it doesn't, then don't worry about it. Just use choices and intentions instead. But first of all, I'd get curious and wonder why I don't. Is there anything missing? Could life change or be enhanced if I did? So that's the first question. But everything that is involved in the self-leadership approach can be utilized in your life to enhance your life overall without actually saying, well, if you don't set goals, it's all over, Red Rover. But it's if you understand your values and your strengths, that will influence the choices that you might actually decide to take. That's it. Get curious. That's number one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess before we wrap up, is there any other questions or comments from people online?
No worries. What often happens when you're at something like this is that a question, or when you've had some time to think about it and take it in and see the resources and that come through, you may have a question then, and feel free to send that through, and I'm always happy to answer them. It's a really deep and broad topic, And so there's a lot to learn, but as I said, it's pretty practical in terms of the way that you can put it into action. So any questions at all, just let me know. And thank you for devoting your lunch hour to a new topic. Okay. Oh, we've lost
Thanks,
you.
Angela.
You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate it. Thanks everyone for your time, and
Okay.
we'll see you next time.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.